Do Russia's attacks on Ukraine's critical infrastructure amount to war crimes? A team of UN-appointed legal experts is in Ukraine collecting evidence to present to the UN Human Rights Council next March. And it's important to note here that earlier this year, the UN concluded that Russia had committed war crimes in areas that it had occupied. Well, today, investigators said that the massive blackouts resulting from airstrikes that have destroyed much of the power grid, it said that has been devastating for millions of people. However, take a listen.
International humanitarian law has provisions to protect civilian infrastructure. Part of the analysis that we are engaged in at present and that we will continue to engage in the coming weeks is whether these attacks constitute war crimes.
The Commission has, of course, gathered new evidence. It's now being considered, assessed with other kinds of evidence. This is a complicated and thorough process, so that process is ongoing, and we cannot point to particular incidents or conclusive remarks at this stage.
All right, I want to bring in now Gayana Nurijayan. She is an international lawyer from Ukraine. She is based in Norway. It's good to have you with us this evening. And I want to get back to the issue of how an international court or a tribunal might deal with the alleged war crimes being committed in Ukraine. But first, how are the Ukrainian courts, how are they dealing with this issue?
Good evening. It's good to be here tonight. Ukrainian courts continue working even in the war conditions. So despite the ongoing war, Ukrainian courts, most of them are functioning, and they are trying cases, war crime cases related to incidents directly perpetrated by Russian soldiers. So we've seen already more than a dozen convictions on different crimes related to killing of a civilian, sexual violence, pillaging, indiscriminate targeting of civilian objects.
And how is that going? I know we were expecting courts and judges to remain impartial, but at the same time, they are dealing with people who are accused of attacking the country and the system in which they live.
Well, the cases that the judges are dealing with, they are not concerned with the fact of waging the war for which basically the Russian leadership is responsible. They're dealing with specific episodes of war crimes committed on the ground. And in fact, international humanitarian law requires that the state tries these cases and ensures accountability for them. And as regards independence, I think there are also specific standards in international law, and in particular international human rights law, that are used to judge whether a trial is independent or not. I think in general, an abstract notion of independence does not help us to reach any conclusion here.
Okay. I want us to take a listen to something that we heard earlier this week from the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. Take a listen.
Russia must pay for its horrific crimes, including for its crime of aggression against a sovereign state. And this is why, while continuing to support the International Criminal Court, we are proposing to set up a specialized court backed by the United Nations to investigate and prosecute Russia's crime of aggression.
That sounds like a good idea. It's a noble aim, but isn't it doomed from the very beginning because of Russia's power of veto at the United Nations Security Council?
Well, establishment of a special court to prosecute crime of aggression does not necessarily need approval or decision from Security Council. It can be, for example, established on the basis of the agreement by several states and then supported by United Nations General Assembly, or it can be established on the basis of agreement between Ukraine and an international organization. So establishment of this separate special court for aggression does not necessarily require Russia's approval.
And that's a very good point to make, and we appreciate you doing that. I understand that 14 European Union countries, they've already launched investigations of their own. In the end, do you think that this is this idea of universal jurisdiction, is this the most likely way that alleged Russian war criminals can be punished?
I think the main burden of adjudicating these cases will lie on the domestic system, on the shoulders of Ukrainian courts, but all other mechanisms that are available there, be it universal jurisdiction or the International Criminal Court in The Hague, or eventually the Special Tribunal on Aggression, are important as well. So I think these are all parts of the puzzle. I don't see a big role for cases on the basis of universal jurisdiction, because in many countries this actually is limited by the requirement that the cases can go forward only if the suspect or the accused is present in the country. Yeah. And it's quite unrealistic to imagine that it will happen in many cases.
In many cases, particularly in the case of Vladimir Putin, is he ever going to be brought to justice realistically for what he has done in Ukraine without there being a fundamental change in who's running Russia?
I think that's a very good question, and perhaps we have to adjust our expectations here. And if we have even a special tribunal that can at least issue an arrest warrant, or even have a trial in absentia, provided that this complies with all the necessary guarantees of due process, can already be a form of justice and victory for Ukraine.
It is plausible if there were to be a complete change of leadership in Russia, and the new leadership would want to get rid of Vladimir Putin in a very orderly way. It could hand him over to the International Criminal Court, for example. I mean, is that a plausible way to perhaps hope that justice will be served to Vladimir Putin?
I think that would be the best outcome in this situation, but it is questionable how unrealistic that we will see this in our lifetime, the change of regime in Russia towards a more sort of democratic path and the readiness to reckon with the crimes committed by Putin and current Russian regime. Gayana
Nurijayan, we appreciate your time and your insights tonight. Yeah, let's hope that time is on our side, the side of justice. Thank you.
Thank you.